It wasn't just a haunted house. It was a surgical chamber for the soul. When The Legend of Hell House opened in 1973, it came wrapped in shadows both on screen and off. Viewers were lured in by the familiar promise of creaking doors and flickering candlelight, but what they got was something colder and much more precise. This wasn't a gothic ghost story in the traditional sense, it was an autopsy, one designed by Richard Matheson, a man who believed horror should dissect us, not just scare us. Based on his own novel, the script was handed over to director John Huff under one condition: the ending could not be revealed, not even to the actors. The result was a film performed under pressure, both psychological and physical. Special low-frequency sound waves were blasted through the set. Static fields were manipulated to mess with heart rates. Actors weren't just pretending to be disturbed, they were being subtly and systematically destabilized. And perhaps that's why Hell House doesn't feel like other haunted house films. It's less about ghosts and more about thresholds. What happens when the human mind brushes against forces it wasn't built to understand? The film doesn't scream, it hums. And underneath that hum, something rotten is growing. They say the house in the film was inspired by England's real-life most violent haunting. They say the machines used in the film left bruises. They say the final scene was cut because it revealed too much about the afterlife, about pain, about truth. But those are just stories, unless they aren't. These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about The Legend of Hell House. Fact 1. The script was a puzzle with missing pieces. Richard Matheson didn't just write the screenplay, he booby-trapped it. The cast received scripts with entire pages missing, particularly the final sequences. No one, not even the lead actors, was told how the story would truly end. Director John Huff was instructed to withhold the resolution, forcing the performers to react to paranormal chaos without knowing what they were really reacting toward. Pamela Franklin reportedly asked for clarity about her character's motivations during the film's final act. Huff's response? Pretend you're being peeled back. That was it, no explanation. Just imagery designed to unravel. It created a unique kind of fear, one based not on what the actors imagined, but on what they weren't allowed to know. Roddy McDowall, a veteran of psychological horror, admitted in interviews that Hell House left him mentally adrift more than once during filming. So here's the question. When a horror story hides its ending from its own players, who's really in control, the storyteller or the house? Fact 2. The machines were real, and they hurt. Most haunted house films rely on props and smoke. Hell House relied on voltage. The machines seen in the film, electromagnetic scanners, vibrational amplifiers, pulse regulators, weren't built in a Hollywood warehouse. They were borrowed from real-world research labs. Some of the equipment came from British military surplus. Others were repurposed biofeedback devices meant to monitor neurological responses under extreme stress. On set, they weren't always decorative. During one key sequence, Pamela Franklin was strapped into a device that emitted an actual electrical pulse. It left her trembling and bruised. Crew members reportedly refused to go near the machines between takes. The buzzing, the lights, the static, they weren't just part of the performance. They created a low hum that some claimed caused nausea or anxiety. One technician said the machines felt like they were waiting for something to happen. Were these just psychological tricks, or did the filmmakers stumble onto something reactive? Fact 3. They used infrasound to induce fear. Before the Blair Witch Project and before Paranormal Activity, there was Hell House, and it was already experimenting with ways to make you afraid without showing you a thing. Among the tools used, infrasound, low-frequency sound waves, below the range of human hearing, capable of triggering unease, vertigo, even panic. Director John Huff was reportedly obsessed with the concept after reading about it in British psychological warfare manuals. A hidden speaker was installed in the set's foundation. It emitted pulsing tones between 18 and 20 hertzes, sub-audible, but physically present. Cast members described feeling tightness in the chest and a sensation like something was standing behind you. It was never publicly disclosed during production. Only later did a lighting technician reveal that the house hummed even when the power was off. Today, many horror directors praise Hell House as ahead of its time. But if it was so ahead, what else did it know? Fact 4. The house was a real location, but no one will say where. Most viewers assume Hell House was filmed on a studio set dressed up to look like an old English manor. But the truth is, stranger, much of the film was shot in a real, privately owned estate. The exact name of the location has never been officially confirmed in any behind-the-scenes feature or commentary. What's known is this: the production secured access to a massive countryside house for just under 6 weeks. According to crew notes, the property had been abandoned for over a decade with signs of vandalism, mold growth, and one room inexplicably filled with hundreds of dead birds. Local townspeople referred to it as the place that doesn't rent twice. John Huff later admitted that he refused to sleep there during overnight shoots. A backup generator reportedly failed every time they attempted to film in the basement. The production eventually rewrote those scenes to avoid using that space entirely. And the house? It was reportedly demolished in the early 1980 seconds, though no permit for demolition has ever surfaced. Why the secrecy? Was it to avoid legal issues or something else entirely? Fact 5. Roddy McDowall demanded a scene be cut, then refused to explain why. Roddy McDowall was no stranger to eerie material, but during Hell House, he crossed a personal line. In the original script, there was a key monologue in which his character, Ben Fisher, recalls an out-of-body experience he had inside the house during a failed exorcism years before. The scene was shot. McDowall reportedly delivered the performance with such intensity that the set fell silent after cut. But later that night, he approached Huff and asked that the footage be destroyed. Not reshot, destroyed. No reason was ever given. Huff respected the request but always referred to it in interviews as the scene that told the truth. Some believe McDowall had a personal spiritual experience during the shoot. Others think the scene referenced real occult rituals that Matheson had researched. The footage, if it still exists, has never been screened publicly. What did McDowall see in that scene that made him want it buried? Fact 6. The author had to fight to keep the ending intact. Richard Matheson wasn't just the writer of Hell House, he was its gatekeeper, and he fought tooth and nail to keep the film's final scene intact against producers who believed the ending was too metaphysical and risked alienating mainstream audiences. The original cut included a confrontation in which the house's energy field is revealed not to be powered by ghosts, but by psychic residue of belief. In essence, the horror wasn't caused by spirits, but by human obsession with trauma. The house was haunted because people needed it to be. Producers feared the message would go over viewers' heads, or worse, suggest that horror was entirely self-inflicted. A more literal ghost ending was proposed. Matheson refused. Test audiences were split. Some found the ending disturbing in its spiritual ambiguity, others found it brilliant. Ultimately, the studio allowed the original ending, but trimmed several key lines of dialogue that explained the theory more directly. To this day, most viewers miss the film's deeper thesis. Maybe that's by design. Or maybe the scariest thing about Hell House is how much of it is about us. Fact 7. The actress wasn't acting during the possession scene. In one of the film's most unsettling moments, Florence Tanner, played by Pamela Franklin, enters a trance-like state, speaks in a guttural male voice, and collapses, convulsing, in the middle of the séance room. Audiences assumed it was acting. It wasn't. On that day, the temperature in the filming room dropped drastically, not by degrees, but by 12 full Celsius points in under 3 minutes, according to a production assistant who logged the anomaly. The cameras rolled. Pamela Franklin began her scene, but suddenly went limp and fell backward, striking her head on the floor with a sound that made the boom mic clip. She began muttering lines that weren't in the script. What's disturbing is that some of those words, names, dates corresponded to entries from a local death registry discovered years later by a film historian researching the movie. Franklin was taken off set and didn't return for 3 days. She never spoke publicly about the incident. When asked decades later about the scene, her only comment was, "I don't remember filming it, and I'm fine with that." What exactly possessed her performance that day, and who was really speaking? Fact 8. The composer used a broken piano and animal bones. Brian Hodgson, best known for creating eerie soundscapes for Doctor Who, was hired to design Hell House's unearthly sound. But instead of using traditional instruments, he created an acoustic torture lab. Hodgson set up in a small studio lined with copper wiring and insulation. He used a piano that had been partially dismantled. Some strings were missing, others intentionally detuned. He scraped the wires with animal bones, rattled iron chains in water, and even fed reel-to-reel tape loops through contact microphones pressed against human skin. What resulted was a score that feels less like music and more like an intrusion, like something breaking into your head. The unsettling part? One frequency in the mix, 16 Hz, has been associated with hallucinations and vision disturbances in lab tests. That same frequency appears in the film's final crescendo right as the house awakens. Did Hodgson know what he was doing to the audience, or was the soundtrack itself haunted? Fact 9. The director hid a face in the walls. And it wasn't in the script. There's a moment, barely noticeable, where the camera pans past a cracked wall in the corridor. Most viewers don't see it. But if you freeze frame at just the right second, a face appears embedded in the peeling wallpaper. It doesn't blink. It doesn't move. But it's there. The production designer denied placing it. So did the cinematographer. Director John Huff, when confronted during a 1987 interview, smiled and said only, "It wasn't in the script, but I didn't remove it either." Speculation has swirled ever since. Some claim it was a crew member playing a prank. Others believe it was an accidental reflection, though the angle makes that nearly impossible. What's more unnerving is that the face doesn't match any known cast or crew member. It's male, middle-aged, blank-eyed, and no one has ever identified it. Was it an accident? An Easter egg? Or just the house watching back? Fact 10. One shot was reused from a 1,960 seconds occult documentary. There's a brief flickering shot in Hell House, a close-up of an open eye, filmed in harsh green light, dilating unnaturally wide. It lasts less than a second, and it doesn't match the rest of the film's visual tone. That's because it didn't come from the film. According to a now declassified BBC archive, that shot originally appeared in a 1966 television documentary on possession and trance states. The footage had been deemed too disturbing for rebroadcast and was thought lost until someone in the Hell House editing suite reportedly added it in during the final cut. Why? No one on record will say. Hodgson, the sound designer, hinted once that there's more than one kind of haunting. The eye belongs to a patient in a Scottish hospital who was undergoing what researchers called electrical spiritual stimulation. What that means, exactly, was never clarified. So the real question is, why splice real psychological trauma into a fictional haunting? And what does it say that no one noticed until years later? Fact 11. A real exorcist was brought on set, then asked to leave. During the second week of production, unexplained occurrences began piling up. Lights shorted without reason, equipment was found rearranged, and a stagehand was reportedly knocked unconscious by a falling light that had been bolted just hours before. The crew joked about the Hell House curse until the producer brought in a real-life exorcist. Reverend Anthony F., a fringe Catholic cleric known for working on allegedly haunted properties, was asked to bless the set and offer peace of mind. He stayed for 2 days. On the third, he asked to leave. Not because of an emergency, but because, in his words, something here has already chosen to stay. It would be arrogant of me to interfere. That quote was scribbled on the back of a lighting schedule by the assistant director. The note was found years later in an old production binder and confirmed by 2 surviving crew members. No further incidents occurred, at least not on camera. Was the exorcism successful, or was it simply acknowledged and left alone? Fact 12. The house's layout was deliberately non-Euclidean. One of the most unnerving aspects of Hell House is how characters seem to lose track of where they are. Hallways loop. Rooms don't connect logically. Doorways lead to unexpected spaces. Audiences chalked it up to editing. But it wasn't. Production designer Bernard Lloyd built the house's interiors on a soundstage with deliberate spatial distortions. Some walls were constructed at slight inward angles. Corridors were compressed to appear longer on camera. Certain rooms were shifted between scenes. Without warning, sets were moved while actors were at lunch to confuse their internal mapping. And it worked. Pamela Franklin reportedly got lost trying to find the restroom on set 3 times. Roddy McDowall later commented, "By week 3, I wasn't sure if we were making a film or living one." The idea was to simulate the disintegration of rational space to make both characters and viewers feel that the house was constantly folding in on itself. But if space can lie, what else in Hell House isn't what it seems? Fact 13. One actor was hospitalized for nerve exhaustion. The role of Dr. Barrett, the skeptical physicist in Hell House, was played with icy precision by Clive Revill. But what wasn't revealed at the time was that Revill suffered a complete nervous breakdown just days after wrapping his final scene. According to an unpublished interview, the actor checked himself into a London hospital, citing symptoms of insomnia, paranoia, and heart palpitations. The diagnosis: acute nervous exhaustion. He remained under observation for 10 days. What triggered it? Revill later told a colleague that his mind had looped during one of the final takes, particularly during a monologue where his character asserts that everything in the house is explainable. The lights flickered, the room temperature dropped, the words stopped making sense. "I felt like I was lying," he reportedly said. Years later, when asked to record commentary for a special edition DVD, Revel declined, not out of disinterest, but because, in his words, "I don't revisit that place, not even in memory." Was it method acting pushed too far, or something else pushing back? Fact 14. The studio tried to ban the word hell from marketing. Despite its chilling title, The Legend of Hell House almost had its name changed by the studio's marketing department. Concerned about public backlash and religious objections, executives floated alternatives like The Belasco Curse and House of Secrets. The problem? Richard Matheson had negotiated a rare clause in his contract: the right to approve or veto any title change. When he received the list of alternative names, he reportedly responded with a single note: "If you remove hell, you remove the point." The debate escalated to legal counsel. At one point, posters were printed using the sanitized title, but were never released. The original name prevailed. Ironically, the word hell became a selling point, teasing something dangerous, forbidden, and spiritually charged. And decades later, it's precisely what has kept the film alive in cult circles. But it begs the question, why were they so afraid of a word? Fact 15. One scene was inspired by a real Victorian séance transcript. In the scene where the team attempts a controlled séance, Florence Tanner becomes possessed by a spirit calling itself Daniel, who speaks of sin, judgment, and rotting silence. The script plays it like drama, but the phrasing, tone, and even some exact lines were lifted from a real séance transcript from 1889. The document in question came from the archives of the Society for Psychical Research. Matheson had accessed the records while researching Victorian spiritualism. The séance was conducted by a London medium who fell into a trance for 6 hours and spoke in 5 languages, none of which she was known to understand. What's more disturbing is that Daniel is referenced in the real transcript as the Silent Architect. The same term appears on a plaque in the Belasco house set barely visible in the film's background. Coincidence? Homage? Or hidden signal? And if the past is speaking through fiction, who's really doing the writing? Fact 16. The Belasco house was based on a real murder mansion. In the film, Belasco House is described as the Mount Everest of haunted houses, a place where perversion, violence, and death left permanent scars. What most viewers don't realize is that its fictional history closely mirrors that of a real estate known as B. Hall, a now demolished manor in the English countryside. Records from the early 20th century show that B. Hall was the site of a series of disappearances, rumored orgiastic rituals, and the unexplained suicide of its wealthy owner, who sealed himself in the basement with no way out. Local lore held that the house had a room that spoke Latin when empty. Richard Matheson never admitted the direct inspiration, but set designer Bernard Lloyd confirmed in a 1994 interview that he kept photos of that property pinned above the drafting table. Even the name Belasco bears a twisted echo. While many assumed it referenced theatrical producer David Belasco, some historians believe it's a corruption of Bellas Caus, a Latinized term found in occult texts meaning the beautiful cause. So the house may be fictional, but the legend behind it? Not entirely. Fact 17. An alternate ending revealed the house was alive. The theatrical cut of Hell House ends with a metaphysical explanation. The house feeds on belief, on fear, on unresolved trauma. But Matheson's original draft went further, much further. In a deleted scene, Ben Fisher enters the central chamber alone, places his hand on the wall, and feels a heartbeat. The house itself is revealed to be a living organism grown not of flesh, but of psychic energy, pulsing, breathing, adapting. The set was built, the scene was filmed, but it was never released. Why? According to editing notes, the footage violated the ambiguity that the studio wanted to preserve. The implication that architecture could become sentient was deemed too Lovecraftian and cut without Matheson's approval. The scene has since vanished. Only a single production still survives, showing McDowall touching the wall, eyes wide, mouth open, as if hearing something speak. Was the house merely haunted, or was it waiting? Fact 18. A prop was removed after it started changing position. In the seance room, a brass statue of a robed figure appears in several scenes, silent, unmoving, decorative. But according to multiple crew accounts, the statue refused to stay still between takes. Set photographer Mavis H. noted that in over a dozen continuity shots, the statue's hands, which were clasped, appeared to shift slightly open. At first, it was blamed on careless handling, But when the prop master insisted no one had touched it ever, the object was removed from the set. The oddity? The statue wasn't part of the original production list. It had been brought in by an assistant set decorator who claimed he found it in storage and thought it fit. No receipt, no documentation, no origin. Pamela Franklin later said she avoided eye contact with the statue altogether, describing it as the most unwelcome thing in the room. After it was removed, the camera dolly in that room stopped malfunctioning. Coincidence or relief? Sometimes the props bring more than just atmosphere. Fact 19, the set was quiet until the tape recorder played back something extra. During one of the film's pivotal scenes, the group records ambient sounds in the Belasco Library to detect ghostly phenomena. The actors wore period-accurate headphones connected to a working reel-to-reel recorder, but something strange happened during rehearsal. Roddy McDowall asked to listen back to the ambient test recording. The room had been silent, no dialogue, no cues. But on the tape, underneath the faint crackle of the machine, a voice whispered, just 2 words, "Still here." The sound engineer froze. The recorder had not been connected to an external microphone at the time. They tried to replicate the anomaly. Nothing. The reel was sent to EMI labs for analysis, and while the official report listed magnetic irregularities, the technician included a note, unlikely to be environmental. McDowall reportedly refused to use that headset again. The prop was replaced. No one ever identified the voice, and it was never heard again. Which leaves only one question. If the house was just a set, who pressed record? Fact 20. The film was screened once for parapsychologists, then locked away. In 1974, a private screening of The Legend of Hell House was held in London for a group of practicing parapsychologists, many of whom had consulted on psychic research for universities and military agencies. The screening was unpublicized. Invitations were handwritten. The audience included Dr. A. F. Clements, an expert in residual hauntings, and Vera H., a controversial medium linked to Cold War psychotronic experiments. After the film ended, the group held a closed-door discussion. No transcript exists. But weeks later, a summary note circulated among British Film Institute staff. It included one cryptic line. They found it familiar, too familiar. John Huff was reportedly not invited to the screening. Matheson later denied it ever happened. But a film canister marked Private Hell was found in BFI archives in the 1,990 seconds, containing a version with extended audio overlays, not present in the theatrical cut. Why was a horror film shown to people who study real hauntings? And more importantly, what did they recognize? Bonus fact, the film's legacy was buried until it wasn't. For decades, The Legend of Hell House remained underseen, under-discussed, almost politely forgotten. It didn't make year-end lists. It didn't inspire sequels. And yet, it kept returning. In the early 2000s, DVD forums lit up with posts about strange reactions to the film, viewers reporting unease, power surges, flickering lights during playback. A few claimed to hear extra lines in scenes they'd watched dozens of times before. Then, in 2011, an independent editor released a fan-cut online painstakingly reconstructed from VHS and TV recordings. It included scenes that no official source acknowledged, including the heartbeat wall moment, including dialogue not present on the script. The video vanished after 2 weeks. No copyright strike, just gone. And now, slowly, the film's reputation is rising from cult to myth. Maybe Hell House was never meant to be watched. Maybe it was meant to be found. In fragments, in frequencies, in silence. Which fact unsettled you the most? The living house, the hidden voice, or the scene that vanished without a trace? Drop your theory in the comment. And if you've ever felt a film watching you back, tell us what it was. We're always listening. And maybe, just maybe, so is the house.